Okay, this week's video lesson will focus on how you can improve the diagnostic notes that you took during class in week 1. You'll need to have the reading out and also a different color pen than you used during class when you took your notes, and of course have your notes ready to go. As we go over them, you're going to make some notes on them and revisions, and hopefully find the areas of the main points that you should have had inside. I'll show you a few of your students' notes for format. Notice a lot of people were lining up notes just straight in a row, and it was hard to distinguish what was truly the main points and minor. This format, the student wrote the topic over the top and then organized from the main ideas in the beginning. That's close to this format that I used. Lining them up in a row is a little hard to study later. Keep in mind that you write your notes so that you can review them later, and you want only that most important stuff to stand out. Using a 2-column Cornell style can be very useful. This is what we'll be reviewing with our SQ3R, but note the right side having that straight bullet format might not be the best. A lot of you organized by paragraphs, which would be alright, except the beginning introduction is so long you probably don't need notes on it at all, except maybe the definition of psychoactive drugs. Okay, so here's another one with the columns. Indenting ideas, using symbols, abbreviating, good strategies, very good strategies. Most of all in this reading though, I think less is more. And so we want to actually review what is most important and limit our notes so that you don't have too much to study later. Okay, so when you survey your reading, always read the title, but also if there is any preview information, be sure to read that, and the author will often tell you what's most important. And this question here is part of that clue. And it tells you, is getting high modern? So you can get a clue that it's comparing it to the past. It talks about the past when it asks how long they've been around. Again, here's reference to modern people. And this word different, possibly using drugs in a different way from the past. And then it tells you the answers to these questions appear in the reading. So automatically I have my focus. Okay. When you're surveying before you read, this is a short article, you look at you've got the title, and you decide when is the author kind of changing idea what it's about. What is it about? I see dates here, so I'm saying, okay, it looks like this is going to refer 19th century. Here's older drug use, moving in to more recent, 19th century is 1800s. Okay, talks about alcohol being used for a long time. I'm not even reading yet. But then I really do want to clue into this question here, because obviously this is matching my preview. There's my purpose right there. I'm going to assume that's it. Okay, and it answers yes. So possibly my thesis is going to be drug use today is different from drug use in the past. So the question I think I'm going to look for as I read is I want to know how drugs are different. Okay, one of the things that clues me in to the fact that that's going to be a focus, the author uses very clear transitions, and I see this transition first. You're not always going to have transitions that answer the sequence of the main idea, but I chose this article because it does have them. When I turn it over, do you see any other transitions right there? On the other side we had first, up here we have a moreover, okay, here's second. So we asked, how are drugs different? I'm not even reading it carefully yet. I already saw my first way it was different. Here's second. I have an in addition. Okay, it might be a subcategory of second, it might be the third way they're different. And then I see the word finally here. So when I take my notes, I'm going to start actually with a statement, either my question or just a thesis statement that drugs are different today from the use in other societies and times in the past. And then I'm going to have my three areas stand out. So right now what I want you to do is look at your own paper and make sure that you have written the central point. That's going to be the statement here. Look at your paper, highlight it, label it, and if you didn't write it, make yourself a note that you need it. You're going to look at your original notes and make corrections on them in a different color. Okay, so that's going to be important. Use a different color. To revise your notes. Anytime you go over them another time, it's very helpful to make your revisions stand out with a different color. Also, when you submit them, that's going to show me that you've gone through this process. Okay, the next thing I want you to do as you look at your own notes is check to see if you have these other main points. The majority of you really have a lot of notes from here. This is the most important thing to have. But I would say, okay, is this not important? The introductory part? And that's actually exactly what this part is. So when you are taking notes, if you are sure about the central point, your introductory material really doesn't have to be included in your notes unless you feel it's absolutely essential to be tested on to understand the point later. Often this material might even slip into your notes later. So quite a few of you spent quite a bit of time doing notes on this part when actually you could have started with this first question, possibly stated as a sentence. Okay, let's look at the nitty-gritty. We are asking ourselves, how is today's drug problem different from drug use in other societies and times? And it says here, the first way it's different is that the motives for using psychoactive drugs have changed. So that's going to be in your notes. So right now, find that, label it, if that's most important. So at the minimum, you should have one, motives are different, and then you'll have your subcategories. Then you ask yourself, how are the motives? If you're not sure what that means, you need to look it up. But you could probably guess as you read it. Motives means your reasons for doing something. Okay. The second way they've changed is the drugs themselves have changed. Look at your notes, make that stand out. Did you find that second main point? If you missed this on your original notes, you missed something that is absolutely going to be on a test on this reading. Okay, now I see this in addition, so I'm going to say, okay, the drugs have changed. Is this point that new synthetic drugs appear regularly related to the drugs have changed? Or is it possibly another one of the ways that drugs have changed in the past overall? Okay, I would say that this looks like one way the drugs have changed. So say, wait a minute, then what's this about? So it says today's psychoactive substances are stronger. Alcohol used to be diluted. Hard liquor appeared later. Heroin is stronger today. in addition, new synthetic drugs appear. So it looks to me like this is an example of how they've changed. And so I would make that part of the bullet here. So I have two reasons so far how drugs are different from the past. I'm going to jump to this finally over here because I can tell this whole paragraph is still about synthetic drugs. And it talks about how scientists and the public know more about the effects. That's my third major change. Without even reading this whole passage, just by skimming and noting those transitions that stand out, noting the question here that matches my preview. Often have students admit that they never read those previews. You gain a lot from them in most cases. That's the heart of my notes right there. And I actually had a couple of students that pretty much wrote not much more than that, which was really very good. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is look at your notes, make sure in a different color you have noted those areas, the first, second, and third way they're different, and you've revised the notes for that. Okay, the next thing I want you to do now is, these should be set out to the side of your paper. You should indent and then take some notes on, for example, how the reasons for using them have changed. So you look down here and you read specifically for that. So as you go through here, look at your paper. You should have that the motives for using them changed, and then say, okay, how have they changed? And as I read, it looks like in the past here in most cultures, the reason people used them was because of religious rituals or medicinal purposes. Tonic would be medicinal. Even as a nutrient beverage, or culturally approved stimulant, much as we drink coffee. Okay, our comparison then, that's the past. In contrast then, we're looking at the use of alcohol and other drugs today. Primarily drugs today are recreational. Generally, people don't use them for religious purposes, but rather to relax. Okay. Furthermore, it talks about how Americans actually have social settings, such as bars, parties, and say pretty much it's separated. Okay, those would be your details that go under your first point. Okay, then you would go on, take this note, and you would look to see, okay, specifically, how have the drugs changed? Then you would take some notes on synthetic drugs, indent your notes under there, and then you would take some notes on how scientists